go live. Exclamation mark will reflect my excitement about this new development on the fact that we are officially live. So that's good. Hope you guys have had a good week. A few not the best changes with PokerStars have come out, but that's okay. We'll struggle through it together. And today is part 3 of our Spin and Go course. And so in order to do that, we are going to begin with a review of some push-fold. And after that, we are going to look at the new version of the strategy, which involves improved pre-flop play. And I put that already in the thread under general poker discussion. You guys can see part 3 of the Spin&Go strategy now. It is live in general discussion. And thank you, Adruna, for providing that link. So we're going to go ahead and start off with that. Again, review of shove fold, and mainly an effective stack of 10 blinds or less. So let's do that. I'm going to go right to my tables. And the way I'm going to do that is actually with ICMizer. Now, ICMizer, for those of you who saw the coaching on it, is very good for quizzing. And we're going to take the quiz and use the results that we get from playing our basic strategy that's part of the Spin and Go course. So let's go ahead and do that. In order to do that, we're going to go to the S&G Coach, the quiz mode, and we're going to find Spin and Goes. So PokerStars Spin and Go 3 Max Hyper. And so let's do that, okay? So as a review for that, I'm going to pull up the course. So Spin and Goes from beginner to winner, course with Colin Moshman. I'll X out of my Pandora there. So here we have the first week of it, okay? And so what we're going to do is go to the shove fold component. Here's improved pre-flop play. Got to pull up that initial version there. Here it is, right? It's part of the article. Yeah, okay. So here we are the small blind. I'm going to time out of this question, aren't I? Oh, man. Okay. But anyway, we're still going to go through this one. So here, the button has opened, and we are the small blind, and the question is what to shove. Okay? So you're in the small blind, and the button has joined the hand. So the effective stack here is going to be, with the button, about 10 blinds. And so we're going to move all in with the yellow hands or blue hands. Okay, so that's going to be all of the pocket pairs, 5s plus, all the suited aces, king 8 suited, etc. So on these hands, the ones to move in with would be all suited aces. We would move in with queen jack offsuit and fold ace 4 offsuit. Okay, welcome Tachian Eridu. Welcome, Follow the Smart Money. I like that screen name. So next, let's try to do this next one a little quicker so we don't actually time out. Okay. So here we are the small blind, first in, and the question is, what do we shove? So here the effective stack is going to be 4 blinds. And that means that we do shove jack deuce off. And you can just pull up the table from the strategy here. So any jack is going to be a shove. 6-4 suited will be a shove. 5-4 offsuit is not a shove according to the table. And 6 deuce suited is an either. Okay, so we're going to fold these two. And 404. So here you see that. Now, it's not going to be true that in every single instance that the poker strategy agrees with ICMizer for a couple of reasons. One of them is that these are not necessarily Nash ranges, given poker strategy they're a little bit more general, and also ICMizer's future game simulation. But in most cases, we should get the same answer, and we're going to continue that with this quiz and see if that is not true. So welcome Shu30. Shakovic, welcome good sir. Hey Marzana. Colin, did you know if I buy from Poker Strategy ICMizer for 3 months, do I receive an upgrade of status touchdown arrow do? I do not know the answer to that, unfortunately. I wish I did, but I do not know the answer. I know there was that article about ICMizer and talking about buying it through Poker Strategy, so maybe consult that, or if not, make a forum post. Okay, so next question. Okay, so here we have an effective stack which is between 6 and 10 blinds. We are the small blind and the button has joined the hand. Okay, so this is going to be the relevant table here that you guys should be able to see. Perfect. And so hands that are shove. Okay, so ace 3 offsuit is with 6 blinds or fewer, so we're going to fold that. Ace deuce suited, we're less than 12 blinds, so we do get to shove that. Ace 5 offsuit also qualifies, and King 7 suited does not qualify. King 8 suited would be the first hand to qualify. Okay, we can see that right there. King 7 suited versus King 8 suited. So we'll submit the answer. Once again, 4 out of 4. Okay, so we're doing good, guys. We're doing good just by following the strategy. ICMizer is happy with us. Pork isn't seeing it. Thanks Z's out for posting that link for him. And next one. Okay, so this is very important, this spot, okay, because part of the basic strategy is this, okay? We have this important special rule that always applies. Once the effective stack is less than 3 blinds, you simply go all in with any hand. Now that is not true in Nash, okay? In Nash we do occasionally fold, but one thing that this rule is taking advantage of is the fact that some players are called too tight. Here, if we shove, he's going to be getting better than 2 to 1. He should call it off with ATC, but some players will definitely fold there. Okay, so here it wants us to fold the 5-4 off and the 4-3 suited, but I would shove both of those. So I agree here with our strategy over the ICMizer output. Tatiana, do the number of questions is unlimited? You mean for ICMizer? No. There's I believe there's a max number of questions that you can do, but a very high number. So I think that's true at least. Okay, next. So here, effective stack is going to be 10 blinds, or just actually it's 10.5 blinds. So we're the small blind, and the button has joined the hand. Okay, so we're looking for any hand that is yellow or blue in color here, okay? So Queen 9 suited does not qualify. King 5 suited does not qualify. Ace 4 off does not qualify. And Jack 10 suited is close but also does not qualify. So these are all folds according to our strategy. And Queen 9 suited, oh god, I treated this as if the blinds were 20-40 instead of 40-80. And that is why I got 3 of these wrong. Okay, so here the effective stack was actually 5 blinds. So let's do it that way, as I'm killing my ICMizer score here. So again, what I'm saying is that I totally screwed up and thought the blinds were 20 and 40, and we had a 10.5 blind stack. But actually we have a 5.5 blind effective stack here, and so it's any hand that's red or better. So here Queen 9 suited is red, King 5 suited is red, Ace 4 offsuit is red, and Jack 10 suited is red, and these are all shoves. Where can I find that range? So here you're going to find that range right here in the Spin and Go beginner section. Sniper Chief. I am new here. You're also going to play some SNGs from Rosanna. Not today. I will, however, replay some to go over the strategy for spins, this new version that's improved pre-flop play. Normally we do have live play as well, some live play, some replays, but today we're going to be focusing on the spin and go core strategy. Arthur A902, saw my mistake before I did. Well done, sir. Why Piranha YY says, I fold the really trashy hands like 3 deuce off with 2 to 3 blinds to protect my stack heads up. Is that a leak? That's a very good question, Why Piranha. And the answer is normally no. Like if you're up against a good player and the effective stack is 3 blinds heads up and you have 3 deuce off, then I agree with folding that, okay? Because a good player is just going to call off ATCA very close to it and you won't show a profit. But against total unknowns or weak players, it's good to shove those hands, and it's always going to be fairly close. So good question, and you are right about that. Nico KW also saw I got the blinds wrong. Well done, Nico KW. Alright, Piranha, since every opponent calls an E2 and I never have better than 35%, I do disagree. It's not true that every opponent will call an E2, but in general you are right, and that does coincide with the Nash result, what you're saying. Insomnia is pissed off on leaving us. Come on, Insomnia, stay, please. Silver Strap, welcome, good sir. Okay, next. Maybe I'll get the blinds right this time. Wouldn't that be cool? So here, factor stake, remember, is stacked before posting the hand. So the big blind is 60. We have 150 at the start of the hand, so this is 2.5 blinds. And by our strategy, we are going to be pushing all hands. Okay. Next question. So here, one of these tricky 8 big blind ones. Here we have over 3 blinds, so we're going to be doing all of the red hands. Okay, so this is going to be we are the button. And so obviously we get to open. We want a red hand on the button. And so those hands are going to be Jack 3 suited is excluded, Jack 4 suited is excluded, 6-5 suited is included, and 7-5 suited is excluded. So these are all very close. Okay, let me just tell you guys this. No matter what you do here with a hand like Jack 4 suited and 7-5 suited, you're not going to make a big mistake. Particularly against weak players who fold too much, I would just shove all of these. But, you know, these are all ones that should be very close. Okay. So we're going to do one more of those and then move on from the shove fold component. Adrian was saying, Piranha, I was playing a few minutes ago and had 2 opponents folding less than 2 big blinds. And yes, you definitely see that. Again, a good player won't do that, but some weak recreational players will. So we'll have this as our last one. So here the effective stack is 10.5 blinds. And the reason it's 10.5 blinds, again, you can have a calculator out, okay? And you're going to divide the stack of the shorter stack player, which is his 460 at the start of the hand, by the big blind, which is 40. So we'll get 11.5 blinds. Okay, so given that it's 11.5 blinds, any hand that's yellow or better, we're going to shove. You are the small blind, and the button has folded. So it's going to be anything at Queen Deuce off, etc. here. So Queen 5 off will qualify. 9-4 suited will qualify. 9-8 off will qualify. And 7-3 suited will not qualify. Okay, so there we go. So that is our review of the shuffle before we move on. Nico KW, I've seen player folding 0.25 blinds. Man, that kind of player is the best. So let's go on here, and the next thing we're going to talk about today is the button play and the idea of stealing the blinds. Okay, so in order to do that, let's start off and let's look at our new strategy. So in order to do that, I just posted that. Here we go. And let me make sure that this is something that you guys can see. So give me 1 second to get the spacing right there. Okay. Okay. So you're on the button. If the effect size is 10 blinds or more, play the following range. Okay, so any hand that's colored, we're going to be doing, if we're on the button and the effective stack is 10 blinds or more, which means that we have at least 10 blinds and also that our opponents have at least 10 blinds, then we're going to play these hands and we're going to play them with a min raise. And this is what most people who play Spin&Goes professionally or serious regs do, okay? For the most part, when they're over 10 blinds, they're going to be raising small to either, say, a 10, 20 to 40 chips, 45 chips, a small raise. And then we're going to be willing to stack off with these hands and fold facing 3-bet with the blue hands. Okay, so these are the hands that we're going to open. And the reason why this is very powerful is, again, because of risk reward. We talked last time about risk reward ratio, immediate profit. And here, let's say, for example, the blinds are 10-20. We have a stack of 500 chips. Instead of risking 500 chips to win the 30 that's out there, we only risk 40 or 45 chips to win the 30 that's out there. So we get a much better risk-reward ratio. And the other thing is that we don't mind if our opponents call us, because then they're going to be playing out of position post-flop, and particularly at 50 cent, $1, $3, $7 games, and even sometimes at 15s through hundreds, you're going to have a lot of recreational players, and they might play very poorly post-flop. So these are going to be the hands that we open on the button with a small raise when the effective stack is 10 blinds or more. If the effective stack is 10 blinds or less, then we're going to be playing shove fold just as we did last time. When I said last time, I actually meant 5 minutes ago when we were doing our shove fold quiz. So that's the button play and the idea of stealing the blinds. So what we're going to do now is take a look at some hands from my database where we open, okay, on the button. And the way that we're going to do that, let me just go ahead and I'll do the filtering with you guys. So here I'm going to be pulling up my poker tracker. And I'm going to say I want to do a new report. I want to do a hand report. And then we're going to do some filters. Okay, so I'm going to click on more filters here. And then I'm going to do tournament table size as 3 max tournaments. Okay, because pretty much Spin&Goes are going to be the only 3 max tournaments, at least that I know of. And then we're going to do the following. We are going to do hero's position, which is going to be player position pre-flop. The button is always 0, so we'll do player of is exactly 0, so that means that we are on the button. And then we're going to add that we raise, so actions and opportunities pre-flop. Pre-flop raises, we raise first in. And here we go. So we'll save and apply filters. And let's go from the other direction this time. So I'm going to say most recent 500 hands and then pick some earlier hands and we'll take a look. So there we have some filtering in Poker Tracker, and we'll see right away whether we got that filtering right. ZSOT, some of what we're talking about does have applicability to heads up, particularly heads up hypers. Yes, so good question there. Okay, so these are all going to be hands where we open. And so here we open the pocket fours. Now, one of the things that's very important is we need to know what to do facing 3-bet. So typically, if we open, let's say that the big blind 3-bets, a lot of the time he's going to 3-bet to something like 100. And what we would do then, what I would normally do if he 3-bet to 100 is I would 4-bet shove. And sure enough, if we go back to this, we see with the red hands, we're going to move all in facing a re-raise. Okay, so that coincides with what we're supposed to do here. And so again, if one of these guys 3-bets to 100, we're going to 4-bet shove. Now you may ask, well, what happens if one of these guys shoves? And by our strategy, we would actually call off the shove. But one of the things to keep in mind, that might seem too loose to some of you to get it in with 25 blinds. And again, some players, that's totally true. You wouldn't actually want to get it in. But generally, if someone shoves you, they're not going to have a premium hand. And we're getting odds, so you could definitely raise call off against a lot of players with a hand like pocket fours, even facing a shove. Okay, next hand. So here, any ace is going to be an open. And we face a 3-bet. And this to me is a very standard fold. And sure enough, that's going to coincide. Okay, we're supposed to open any ace and then not get it all in until ace jack offsuit. Now, to be honest with you guys, to me that seems kind of tight. So tell me what you think, but like for example, if I open ace 10 and I get 3-bet, I would normally 4-bet shove. I normally call off with ace 10 also. But certainly any low or mid offsuit ace, we were going to be raise folding. So the exact cutoff doesn't matter quite as much. Basically, we want a pretty strong ace to stack off at deeper effective stacks. Okay. So here, ace 9 suited. Hand that I would definitely stack off with pre-flop. And here, so ace-2's offsuit. Now this is kind of an interesting spot because here we're over 10 blinds. By the strategy we raise small, and that's exactly what I do here. But the other option would be just to shove this, which is fine too. When they say 10 big blinds, it doesn't have to be exact, okay? This is not like, you know, the mathematically exact strategy. It's one to basically follow, occasionally, you know, use your discretion, your common sense to override, and not worry about getting completely caught up in the exact details of time. So here, if you just wanted to shove ace-2 off for 10.5 blinds, that would be no problem. All right, Brian says ace-9 suited is way too tight, IMO. And so, yeah, there are a couple of slightly tight aspects there. I would agree. So here we have a change of pace. We get flatted, and now we have to go to post-flop play. Now remember, by our guidelines, we're always going to c-bet, and this is a really good flop to c-bet because it's paired. And so a ton of this guy's range, he's just going to fold. He's got ace-deuce of spades. He's probably just going to fold. He has 9-8 of hearts. You know, he's just going to fold, etc. So a lot of hands that he would have, he would just fold. I have no idea why I check here. That's a really strange check. But okay. And we call, check back. I guess I knew that he had flop top pair some M. Adriano, against pro players with 25 blinds, I want to call a 4-bet shove pretty tight. They're usually well ahead of me. Adriano, do you mean a 3-bet shove? Like if we open on the button and a player shoves? Or you mean like if we're the big blind, we 3-bet to 100 and we face a 4-bet shove? So we open and they both fold. So here with king 8 offsuit is a open. Okay, so we open down to king 6 offsuit. And you might say, what's the difference between, say, king 7 off and king deuce off? But king 7 offsuit is the better hand in that, for one thing, it will have higher equity against a calling range. For example, if the big blind defends with a hand like ace-4 suited, then we have an overcard to the 4. Also with our 7, it blocks a hand like pocket 7s, so it's just a marginal improvement each pip we go up. So Adriano says, yes, sorry, right, 3-bet. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call off 3-bet shoves super wide, but bear in mind that at 10-20, if you open and someone shoves, they're usually not going to be doing that with premium hands. Occasionally we'll find that. Sometimes a guy will just 3-bet shove in 25 blinds with aces, but most of the time we can cap their range. We are getting odds, so it wouldn't be too tight. For example, if you're folding a hand like 6s, if you open 6s and the big blind shoves, then unless you have a pretty strong read, that's definitely going to be too tight as a default. Tim64 puts ace-10 off out of the 3-bet shove call range, 25 blinds. Nico, you mean that Tim64 would open ace-10 off on the button and then fold it facing 3-bet shove? Um, if so, I wouldn't generally do that. But, I mean, what do you guys think? People who've played a lot of spins. For me, if I open ace-10 off at 10-20, I would, as a default, call it off for 25 blinds. Tachanadu, if I open fold to a shove at 10-20 with pairs 2-2 to 5-5, too tight. No. I mean, particularly with deuces, I definitely wouldn't call off a 25 blind open shove with deuces. So Adriano and Nico KW both saying I think he may be right. So I guess it just depends, you know, if you know anything about the player and also, you know, how people in your specific buy-ins play. But I've just seen when I play spins, too many people just randomly shoving early that I don't really want to, I'm not going to give them that much credit. So for me, I would, if I open ace-10 off and an unknown shoves over me at 10-20, I personally am calling that off. And the other thing about it is if you think about it from an unexploitability perspective, then you are going to leave yourself vulnerable to getting exploited if you're opening something like top 50% pre-flop and then folding a hand as strong as ace-10 off facing 3-bet shove. But I certainly acknowledge it's close. Tim64 may be right. I'm sure he's played more spins than me. But I'm just telling you guys how I personally play. So let's go on here to the next hand. So a raise fold with the King-8 offsuit. Ace-deuce suited. We open. And we would fold that, facing 3-bet. Now, I want to make another point here, which is if you're subsequently confronted with a raise, only move all in with red hands and fold any blue hands. So another time to override this guideline, which I'm sure the authors of the strategy would agree with, is let's say, for example, you open ace-deuce suited on the button, like we do here, and suppose the big blind clicks it. So he 3-bets from 62, he makes a 94. In that case, we would certainly flat, getting such good odds in position. Adriano, I would check my database after and see what I usually do and what they usually have with ace-10 offsuit. I mean, I've seen people at 10-20 open shove and 3-bet shove hands like 6-5 suited, king-5 off, total junk some of the time. So just not willing to give people quite that much credit. So here with Queen-Jack offsuit, what we're supposed to do here is not stack off. The interesting thing though is that we are shorter effective with this player, and so in game I fold. However, against a player that I had a better read on, a lot of the time I will call this because we are only about 10 blinds with him. 3-bet range usually consists of lower pockets and suited broadways, so ace-10 off isn't too bad of a call. Yeah, people have broadways, that's pretty sweet for us because obviously we have a lot of those dominated. So here just open shove, this is right at 10 blinds. You know, 10 blinds and one chip. Same there with the 9-8 suited. He makes an interesting call with 10-8 offsuit. So another shove fold spot there. So here we face a donk bet, which is interesting. And when we face a donk bet, this is something we've talked about before in this coaching, which is that donk bet's the biggest factor in assessing how strong a donk betting player is usually going to be the size of the donk bet. So when he bets half pot and I've missed, I'm just going to fold here. And what I would do though, if someone like min donk bets, we can almost treat that like checking. So if he bets something like 20 or 25 into 102, then I would usually call him with the plan of betting the turn if he checked, or raise immediately as a bluff. Demon29 RU, hello in Russia. So they both call. Middle pair, decently strong hand here. I see on the small side and take that down. Here we open King-9 offsuit this would be another raise fold hand. And after checking back flop, pretty clear call down here. Obviously c-betting's fine. Again, under 10 blinds, we're normally going to be playing shove fold. I would shove any ace here. So 10-9 offsuit I open, and let's take a look here. So on the button, 10-9 off is going to be an open according to our strategy. And this player, okay, so once we open, this player is, if a player has shoves like anything 8 blinds or less pretty much, we're always going to be calling them off. Or it'd be very rare you wouldn't. So here he shows 5 blinds, we're going to be calling off our entire opening range. Now, what makes this spot a little bit trickier is that this player calls as well. But here we're getting 4-1. He's not necessarily strong, and so for that reason I flat and check back. So this would be a good time to bet or draw. We have an open and a straight draw, except for the fact that this is a dry side pot. So we don't really gain all that much by getting this player to fold. Here, queen 9, so this guy is just over 8 blinds, so he's 3-bet shoving, and normally I would go ahead and call there. Jack 9 offsuit, so this is going to be a raise fold. So here we're talking about what players shove for 25 blinds. Now this is a little bit different because there is a flatter as well. But this would go against what I was saying. Okay, I was saying that guys usually do not shove premium hands for 25 blinds, and here he shoves jacks, and the player who calls with ace-10, like I'm advocating, gets it in bad and loses. Again, players are going to be a little more likely to just shove a hand like this once there's dead money from a small blind call as well. But I'm certainly not always right with what I'm saying. There are definitely going to be times when players show up with strong hands after 3-bet shoving. So c-bet small here, and then look to check down queen high. Ten-7 suited, we raise fold. I'll just do 1 or 2 more of these, and then we will move on. Okay. So that is our idea, playing on the button, opening a lot of hands, and then being a little bit tight facing 3-bet, particularly at low stakes. I mean, guys usually aren't going to be 3-betting 2 wide. So that's kind of the justification for the strategy of opening wide and then not calling, being a little bit tight facing 3-bet. And it doesn't really matter, okay? I mean, the bottom line with a hand like ace-10 offsuit, if you raise to 40 with ace-10 offsuit 10-20 and the big blind shoves, whether you call or fold is just not going to matter all that much in the long run to your results. And that's true with any close decision. Okay, what separates really good players from not really good players is the really good players are making few, if any, significant mistakes. And there's no way you're going to make a significant mistake whether you call or fold in a spot like that. Okay. So the next thing that I'm supposed to talk about, and is an important thing to talk about, is small blind play. Okay. And one of the things we're going to know, so here's our small blind strategy, okay? If the effective stack is 10 blinds or more, and the button opens, we shove these hands and fold the rest. And when the button folds, we raise these hands. Now, one thing you'll notice about that is that means we're never flatting in the small blind. Okay, we're never just calling in the small blind. And the reason for that is because of position. Now again, this is one of those rules that in time you might change a little bit. Okay, so for example, let's say that a very loose player who doesn't play well raises on the button. Okay, it's 500 chips, effective, he raises to 40, and we have a hand like Jack 10 suited. That's a time where in the future you might elect to flat with a hand like that. But for the most part, this is good fundamental strategy, which is playing 3-bet or fold from the small blind. And that's really important. And I also see in other formats as well, flatting from the small blind is popular in a lot of formats. Like in MTTs now, there are more players flatting from the small blind. And I don't really like that play a lot because you end up in a lot of marginal spots where you're out of position and you have some kind of decent but not great top pair hand, and your opponent puts on a lot of pressure. So this is basically a strategy designed to keep you guys out of trouble. And this is, for the most part, I mean, when I play normally, I do very little flatting from the small blind, particularly with shorter stacks. So Nico KWH, you fold ace-10 off in the small blind. Shouldn't it be a shove? Yeah, so this goes again to the idea of exactly what the cutoff is. But for me, if the button raises, I would not fold ace-10 off. Depending on the effective stack, I would 3-bet small, 3-bet shove. Occasionally that would be a spot where I would flat. But again, the exact cutoff doesn't really matter. But I agree with you, Nico. Generally, I would not fold ace-10 off. But for the most part, this is a pretty good guideline here, and that is how we're going to be playing the small blind. So does that make sense? Ace-10 off, ace-9 off call, says Tatiana. And yeah, that would certainly be reasonable to call those hands. But just folding them isn't so bad. It's like you're rarely going to make a mistake by playing too tight from the small blind. Just because that's such a bad position. You have the worst position post-flop on every street. So that is the basis of that. And while we're at it, let's take a quick look here at the remainder of our strategy. So in the big blind, if the button raises for 2 to 3 blinds, then we now have a calling range. Okay, so this is the first time that we have a range for calling and playing post-flop, which is what we're going to do with the blue hands. And we shove with the red hands. We have another range if the button raises and the small blind calls, and then also hands for when the button folds and the small blind limps and the small blind raises. Here's another one that I personally would play different from. So we have case 3, the button folds and the small blind limps. If it's me, I'm raising super wide in those spots. I know I've talked about that in previous coachings. But particularly against recreational players. Against regs, it's more tricky because they might be planning to limp 3-bet you and have annoying creative ideas up their sleeve. However, against a recreational player, I would raise very wide. I would certainly raise a hand like King 4 suited, King 9 off, Ace Deuce offsuit, 6-5 suited. But that's something that you can definitely build up to and do more of that. Money is made post-flop in spins and heads up. Yes, money is also made pre-flop in them, but I agree people making significant mistakes post-flop is pretty sweet. If button raise, why ace-10 and ace-9 off? Why we don't shove from small blind? Well, because that's how the strategy is written, Tatiana. Again, I think, okay, so let's say that I had the people who created the strategy. I think that was my friend Unam and KTU on here. I really think, and we asked them about it, they would say, don't get caught up in the exact details, okay? It's not like these are totally set in stone rules. If you want to shove 3-bet small, even flat with those hands, by all means do it. This is just the basic guideline. So I'm definitely not arguing that you should fold ace-10 off in the small blind when the button opens. And so that is the extent of it, of this version of the strategy. So let's continue on here, and let's look at playing the big blind. So let's take a look here at when we are the big blind and we don't face a prior shove. That sounds good for you guys. So we're going to pull back up here, and we're going to switch around these filters a little bit, okay? So here, player of active position is exactly 0. We're going to get rid of that. And we're going to raise first in. So we're going to add some filters. And player position, so 8 is always the big blind. So let's do that. And then, yeah. So hopefully that'll work. Let's take a look. We'll go back and say, do we want to add more filters to this? I think this should work. We're just going to have to skip through some hands that aren't as relevant. Okay. So here we are the big blind and the button has open. So in a situation like this, we're going to go to the button raises. So he raises 2 to 3 blinds. And so here we would call down to hands like 7-6 suited, Queen 9 off, Ace 2 suited, and these are the hands that we would 3-bet. Okay. You know, let's actually do one more filter. Now I'm thinking about it. Let's do that we VPIP. In other words, that we put some chips in here. So number of players. Voluntarily put in pot on, save and apply. Okay. So now that means that we actually play the hand in some capacity. That should be a little more interesting. So now we'll take a look. Replay hands, here we go. And make this a little bit larger. Probably they are more break even if we look at that situation in HRC and are not worth risk. Yes, more break even, I agree with that. Well put, my love. Somehow got rid of my cards in this one. Okay, here we go. So here the player in the small blind raises, and we are the big blind. Okay, so button folds and the small blind raises, and so we're supposed to call with hands down to Jack 5 suited. Now this is interesting because it says case for the small blind raises to 2 to 3 big blinds. Now in practice, for me, I'm going to defend not exactly the same hands facing a 2 blind raise and a 3 blind raise. And the reason for that is because if the guy raises 3 blinds, we're getting 2 to 1. If he raises 2 blinds, we're getting 3 to 1. And so getting 3 to 1 in position is a lot more powerful. So here I'm going to defend even wider than this. I would actually defend a little bit tighter than this if he raises 3 blinds, a little bit wider than this if he raises 2 blinds. And as an average, this is pretty correct. Okay, so Jack 3 suited, we flat here. I float, and he folds. Okay. So here we're supposed to play 3-bet shove or fold from the big blind. Okay, so we're the big blind and the button raises, and so call with blue hands and move all in right away with red hands. Now if you 3-bet shove here with ace queen off, that's fine. That is a profitable play. However, what I expect to see here and what I do is raise to 100, because that way if he has a hand that we dominate, like ace 7 suited or ace 10 off, it's more likely that he puts chips in. So for that reason I 3-bet small, and just 3-bet shoving is going to be, that would be our normal strategy according to this, to 3-bet shove. So this is kind of an interesting spot. I'm going to put this to you as a quiz question. So we have ace queen off, we have the overcard, the gut shot, the backdoor flush draw, which is all kind of a fancy way of saying we have the nut nothing. So, well, I guess ace queen of hearts would be the nut nothing. What do you guys want to do here? Check fold, shove, bet fold? Who has a plan that they like for this spot? Let me know, and then I'll tell you guys what I like. And ideally, by the way, give some kind of more concrete line. Like, for example, if we check, are we check folding? If we bet, are we bet folding? Okay. Tatiana Erdu, these questions are the best. Thank you, sir. I am glad to hear that. And I'm also glad to see we get some different answers here. Now, I don't know what I do in this hand, okay? I play this hand in late September, so I'm not exactly sure what I do, but I'll tell you guys what line I like here. Now, the first thing that we want to keep in mind is how strong is our hand? And to me, the answer is it's actually not such a weak hand. And the reason for that is because, look, we have 4 outs to our gut shot. We have a likely 3 outs to an overpair, the ace hits. We have another about 1 out with our backdoor nut flush draw. So that means that we probably have about 8 outs against this guy. And so what does that mean? Let's go ahead, let's pull up Equilab for a second, if you guys will indulge me. So let's say that this guy has a weak king, okay? So he has, I don't know, king deuce. It really doesn't matter. I mean, it matters if his kicker blocks one of our outs, it matters. But for now, let's assume he has a weak king with nothing that blocks a card we want to hit. I'm just going to type this in, and I'll show you guys what I've typed in so that I can see things well. Flop is 7 of spades, 10 of hearts, king of hearts. Okay. Now, for those of you who don't know, equity just means the percent you win, okay? So when the equities, when I click evaluate, equities will pull up, and all that means is how often does ace queen win here against the king deuce. Now, I didn't put this in advance, but I believe that the answer here is going to be right about 1 time in 3, okay? So about 32, 33% of the time, somewhere around there, because we have the equivalent of around 8 outs. My guess, if I have to give an exact guess, I'll say 33%. And okay, fairly close, 31.4%. But given that this is a decent sized pot, and he could fold, and when we do get action, then we're usually not going to be a huge dog, then what I like doing here is I really don't want to fold this hand because the pot is large, but it's not really strong enough to bet call. So that leaves a couple options. One is we could do what Insomnia wants to do, it seems, and just ship it. Just not a very elegant play, but it's okay. You know, if he folds, we win 2-10 without a fight. If he calls, we'll win it close to a third of the time. And the line that I really like here is going after a check shove. So I actually bet here. But if I was playing this hand right now, most of the time I would put in a check shove here. So when we check, if he bets, normally he's going to bet 100, and we can shove and have a lot of fold equity and have it be a good risk-reward ratio. So that's pretty cool. If he checks back, we get a free card. Hey, we're cool getting a free card. And if he, like let's say he shoves, then we have to fold. But most of the time he won't shove. So I bet here, and now I go ahead and shove the turn because we've picked up the actual nut flush draw. The pot's large, so I like this turn play. As played, this is what I would do on the turn. My preferred line on the flop is just going to be to go ahead and check shove. So responding to some of what was typed in here. So yeah, if we check call, the problem with check call is that a lot of the time we're facing a guessing game. So again, I like to either check raise, bet out is okay, shove is okay, but check call is not normally what I like to do. MK rates bet fold, which is a fine answer. If we do bet and he shoves, we're pretty much going to have to fold. Shakovic and Nico KW did say check shove. Well done, sirs. Bet folding half pot. I think I prefer to play passively here and hold my opponent's passive as well. My hand might be best, but I don't want to go to ward with it. But remember, Adriano, the pot is large, which is important. Dima 92, 29 RU, check raise, very nice. Do you ever check shove any king here? Okay, so Executor X is basically getting at the idea of, is my suggested play transparent? Am I only doing this with draws and therefore predictable to a good player? And the answer to that, Executor, is if I don't know this guy at all, then no. I'm never doing with the king. And pretty much my range for making this play, or the play I'm suggesting of check shoving, would only be hands like this. Some kind of draw like hand. And so I would be predictable, exploitable, etc. Against a good player, then yes, I would sometimes look to check shove a king and strong made hands as well. So very good question. Insomnia knows this guy. He is Bulgarian. He will call always or raise. I did not know that at the time. But glad to hear that. I'll try to do more of these quiz questions. And let's get rid of this show known hole cards thing. So this is just a straightforward show fold. Obviously we're going to call. He sucks on us. What are we going to do? Nico KW, if I checked flop and he shoved, then yes, we would have to fold. Unfortunately, but no choice. So this is an interesting one here. So let's see. The small blind limps, we have a 12 blind effective stack. What are we supposed to do? Okay, so the button folds and the small blind limps, we're supposed to check back with 7-6 suited. But what I would normally do here is just shove, because against unknowns, they're usually going to be weak when they do this. And so I would definitely shove wider than the range given, including most suited connectors. And he limp calls here. He has pocket aces. I look dumb. But I would make this play again, because for every time they snap call and show aces, another 10 times they're just going to fold whatever junk hand. So, yeah. And how do I miss this? I'm really supposed to suck out on aces after that flop, aren't I? Okay, so this is another example. According to our strategy, we're supposed to shove here, and I prefer 3-betting small. At the turn, I'm going to check back and take the free card with my 10-out draw, river the nuts, and life is good. 99% of the time he will fold, yes. So here, this goes back to the situation we were talking about, where the small blind raises 2 to 3 blinds. We're supposed to call with suited king, and that's, I believe, exactly what I'm going to do here. But if he had raised to 60, I would actually fold there. So this is a float, okay? I'm flatting with the intention of trying to take it away, most likely in a later street. But we also have, this is more than just a total float, okay? If we have a hand like, I don't know, 10-5 that we called pre, that would be pretty much a total float. But here we also have a backdoor flush draw. King high could be good. And I assume I'm just going to give up once he fires turn. So there I 3-bet with ace-8 off. Check back that connected flop. And here in the river, this is going to be a value bet. I bet small because if I bet large, I think that pretty much all hands that I beat are going to fold. So I bet small, looking for him to hero call, for example, a 1-pair hand. Another 3-bet blind on blind. I like these small 3-bets a lot. I would, by the way, so here my plan would have been to call off a 4-bet shove. Just to clarify that. So here we just shove in the big blind. And this is a spot here where a lot of the time I would actually make a blocking bet on the river. In game I fold. So king 6 for about 12 blinds. I just go ahead and shove over his limp and he folds. Here I shove 15 blinds over his limps. So again, I like shoving over limps a lot. It is going to be a very powerful play. Ace-8 off. What if our opponent shove over our bet on river? I guess I would have folded there. Yeah. I mean, it'd be kind of weird. I don't expect to see him do that very much at all, but I would have folded. Insomnia, when you say Jack-10 suited is a very good hand, you mean you prefer a small raise or a check? So here, effective stack is under 3 blinds, so we're going to call off with ATC. I hear what you're saying. Checking is certainly a reasonable play. We can play a post, but out of position, I elected to just go after those 80 chips and take down a small pot without a fight. But I see what you're saying, and your approach is fine too. Another small 3-bet here with the ace king suited. Bang! Look at that flop. So we slow play, and I think I'm either going to... There are two plays here. We don't want to shove here because we want to keep him as wide as possible. We can either check back or we can make a super small bet looking to milk him. And that's the end of our milking. Another small 3-bet here, blind on blind, more big blind play. Any pocket pair, we're going to 3-bet shove blind on blind. So here he limps, and I'm going to raise, and my plan is to call off a 3-bet shove with the pocket 7s. Pocket 4s, we're going to shove any pocket pair over the button raise, and we'll win against the king 10. Here I must have had a belief that he was opening very wide to shove the jack 9 offsuit. More commonly, I would probably flat there. So we'll 3-bet shove any ace heads up for 20 blinds or less. Okay, so here's an interesting spot. We are the big blind, and the button raises and the small blind calls. 7-5 suited is the flat, and so I am expecting that I will flat here, just as our strategy says. And here, okay, if I were the button, if I'm this guy and he folds, then I would never fold here facing this bet of 20. I would either call this, looking to take it away if I had no showdown value, or bluff raise immediately to 100. Thank you, Adrina, for providing that link again. Pocket 9s, I put in the 3-bet, and we'll call off a shove. So here at the king jack suited, the effective stack is 30 blinds, which is a little bit deep to 3-bet shove. This is actually, I believe, now a hand that we looked at last week. And one of the things we were talking about last week is that king jack suited is a better hand to check here than a hand like 7-6 of clubs because of the fact that we do have showdown value with our king high. Okay, so that is that. Let's see what's next. Okay, so now what we're going to do is look at some more post-flop spots, and after we look at post-flop, then we're going to look at some full games and apply all of these concepts together. So if that sounds good, let's do it. And to do that, we're going to need a new filter. Okay, so here we're going to do table size 3 max tournaments, and we're going to do pre-flop raises, raised all in pre-flop, and then we'll negate that. And then also add in here went all in. I think I'm going to be adding in more of these than necessary here. Pre-flop opportunities, face pre-flop all in. Okay, so all of these are going to be on, and then for each of these we'll just go ahead and say not selected. And then we need a last one, which is soft flop equals true. Okay, so here we go, and let's do ones here from 24th, sounding good to me. So he limps and we check in the big blind. So I check. This is a good spot against an unknown player to go ahead and bet out. On very dry flops, those are good ones to bluff. And one of the things that's really important here is that in small pots, bluffing can be really effective because we don't have to risk all that many chips. Whereas in larger pots, often to successfully bluff, we have to risk a big part of our stack or go all in. So if you're at all unsure, it's fine to go ahead and stab in a small pot like we have here. Like let's say, for example, we have 4-3 off to stab with a bet of 25 chips, where in a large pot you would want to be very confident before you made a big bluff. So I check raise the flop. Against a good player, they're probably going to assume that I don't really have a range for check raising strong here. And then I check because I think a big part of his flop calling range is going to be hands looking to take it away from me. But he checks back. So when he checks back, we think that most likely he has showdown value. Okay, if he was just floating our check raise, then he would probably bet the turn. So when he checks back, what does this look like? A king would probably value bet. It looks like an 8, a deuce, ace high, something like that. And I pot it, he calls, and our best guess now is that he had an ace. But he actually has he has ace deuce, so he gets there. And this is a mistake on his part. He should value raise the river. Heads up, this is just too strong. With bluffing, do you ever find betting small versus better players gets better results? Yes, I do. In theory, the smaller you bet, the more your opponent should call, but it's very possible for players, including good players, to out-level themselves and think that if someone bets large, they have to want to fold, and so it's got to be a bluff. Whereas if someone bets really small, they're like, oh my god, he wants me to call so much. So that's not a hard and fast rule necessarily, but absolutely, Chili Pops, there's some great opportunities to bluff small and get people to out-level themselves into making folds. So very good question. Demon29, are you rates turn bet 80? Yeah, we could have gone ahead and fired the turn as well. So here we're going to c-bet, remember, so we always raise pre-flop and then c-bet, and obviously here we're going to stack off. The only card we may not stack off with would be a 3 on the turn, but other than that, we're going to be willing to stack off. So here I'm checking this for pot control, and it's a mistake here. With the 5 of diamonds, I can call here and go to the river. Effective stack is about 22 blinds. We're going to c-bet small with our entire range. If he checked raise, I would typically flat and take this to the later streets. So here pre-flop, we're going to check this as per our strategy. Go ahead and bet right out, and he folds. And remember, another part of the poker strategy is that if he checks back, we would then stab the turn. So here second pair is a relatively strong hand heads up. When he bets 100 and other overhits, we're just going to fold. Definite check back here. If he had any kind of draw or made hand here, he's not going to fold. So here, I'm going to put this to you guys as our next quiz question. What do you think this guy has? I mean, you don't have to give us exact hand, but what's a hand that would be consistent with what he's done here, okay? He flats a raise pre-flop, he check calls flop, checks turn, and now checks river. What's a hand that this is consistent with? So you can think about that for a moment, and then I'll give my answer. Okay. So let's take these in order. Nico KW says 9-8. And 9-8 is a good answer, so we start the hand off about 15 blinds deep. So yeah, he could flat. He calls with a gut shot and then looks to show down his 9. That definitely works. Sick with it says a low pocket pair, and that's definitely possible. But a lot of players are going to 3-bet shove those pre. So based on pre-flop, I think it's a little bit less likely, but possible. Touchdown Eridu, King 9, which is a good answer. Again, there's definitely some chance he's going to 3-bet that pre. But if he didn't, that's probably how he'd play it post. Shakovic says some draw. That's not overly specific, but that's okay. So if he has a draw, King Jack obviously got there. But yeah, he could have a hand like Jack 9. He's looking to show down his 9. Pasqui says Ace King. He probably would have 3-bet Ace King pre-flop is the only thing. Chili Pop says Ace Deuce. Very reasonable. Kiko and Nahat thinks some kind of 9. All good answers. Insomnia, you probably 3-bet Ace 9 off pre. So it's possible, but I prefer Kiko and Nahat's 9x hands. Kwood 80 says any jack, possibly, but some jacks more likely than others, as Chacha Naradu says. My love says Queen X. There's some other things. Queen X, I think after the turn when check check, he would bet the river. Vex, I think that Ace X is a good guess, but a lot of those pairs you list, he's going to 3-bet pre. And some other good answers as well. But yeah, so I think that King 9 here, Jack 9 are a very good guess. Some hands like Ace 7, maybe Ace 2 suited that flopped also a backdoor flush draw. But basically some kind of 9x or Ace high hand. Let's see. And he has Queen X, so let's see who wins. Again, I said I did not think he had a queen. So the winner here is going to be My Love, who's the only person who thought that Felony had a queen, and he was right. Well done, My Love. Man. So, yeah, good guess. Next hand. Okay. So here, 10-9 offsuit, we raise it in the small blind. And C-bet, I go a little bit under half pot. Dry flops, paired flops tend to be very good. And he shoves. When he shoves here, most likely he has a flush draw or some kind of marginal jack. Obviously we're going to fold, but just my opinion on what he's likely to have. So against one player, I would C-bet. Against two, I expect that I'm going to check back here and take the free card. And one of the things, by the way, is we always C-bet against one opponent in the strategy. I definitely would not always C-bet against two opponents, particularly on a more coordinated flop. Ten-6 suited, we will definitely defend. Another one we might have hit last week, but still an important spot to look at. Go ahead and bet right out with our top pair. And he check raises. I fold here without any kind of read, but it would be reasonable to stack off there as well. Kind of a close spot. This is not a hand that I like how I play. Normally I would bet flop. As played, we should definitely bet turn for value. And as played, we could call river. I must not have noticed I flop bottom pair or something, so it's a pretty stupid hand. 5-3 off, we check. If he checked, we would bet. We'll c-bet the pocket eights, and he folds. Here we will be playing for stacks with top pair, so if he check raises, we'll get it in. And this should be a pretty clear turn shove. And we win that one. We're going to do about 3 more of these, and then we're going to go on and look at a full game and put all these concepts together like that. Bet turn. And here we can value bet river. I check back. It's a little bit tight. We could put out a small bet there, but it wouldn't have mattered against this 8-7. So here just looking to show down our weak second pair hand, and we do that. And I just jam it here with the ace-3 suited. This is, again, a not super elegant line, but the pot's already 150. It's kind of vulnerable. I think my hand's usually best. He could call off with the worst 3 and get scared away in the turn. So I shove for that reason. King 8. Oh, on the, what is it, 4-5-8 flop? Yeah. I didn't really know too much about him, so I kind of folded there, but we could stack off. Pretty close spot. And by our poker strategy with top pair, we would stack off there, so good question. Having done that, let's go ahead now and look at a full game. Let me make sure that you guys can see this, which you can. Okay. So let's put these concepts together here. Okay, let's do it. And these are going to be from, this is a $7 spin. So here hero calls, and this would be if we're looking at it from our strategy that the button enters the pot and the small blind raises. But here, because he enters with a limp and he min raises, hero's call is certainly reasonable. And missing this flop, we just give up post. So 6-5 off is a fold in the button. Remember, we're going to be min raising a lot, but not the 6-5. Jack 10 suited. And we should bet out turn here. So once the flop gets checked, this is a very important concept, okay? Once the flop gets checked, we can weaken players' ranges a lot, and we can weaken them even more on a coordinated flop. Because think about it here, if this guy has a queen, it's very unlikely he's going to check back the flop. So once both of these guys check, it makes it much more likely that our 10 is best, and so we should bet out 40. And I would definitely call this river bet. This guy is not representing much at all. So a bit of a tight fold there. Isn't the strategy too basic for $7 games? Right, Z's out. By sevens, you would want to be using more discretion, for sure. But here, we did not play these games using the strategy. We're only talking about how the strategy and any modifications we want to make would apply to this game. So Queen 6, let's go ahead and take a look and see if that is part of our opening range. So we're in the button. We have Queen 6 suited, and that's going to be the bottom of our open raising range. And I agree with the strategy over hero. I would raise this. Nico rates 7 other games full of fishes. Definitely compared to any other Spin&Go format, sevens and spins will be softer. Quite a lot of value there. So there, 11 blinds, good shove. And Queen 9 offsuit, I would open on the button. So a bit of a tight fold pre-buy here. We should have min-raised. So Jack 4 offsuit for 8 should be right around the cusp. You can consult the pre-flop strategy there for shove fold. And hero takes it. Most of the people on 15 and 30 don't know what they are doing, says Executor X. And yeah, there's no question. I mean, every time you move up, you will encounter better players. But even at the hundreds, there's certainly recreational players. And if you don't play those stakes, you can always observe spins, in particular the highest one going at the time, and see that for yourself. 5 deuce offsuit, I would bet here. And king 6 suited is a shove. So any king for 10 blinds, blind on blind. It's here because we're over 10 blinds. Normally we would min raise with ace 10 off. This would be, so at 25 blinds we might raise fold ace 10 off on the button. Here at 11.25 blinds we would never do that. It's just too short stacked. We'd be getting too good odds, and ranges are that much wider. So here, hero makes a nice play to keep his range wide and get him to stack off as wide as possible. 7-4 off is a little bit loose there on the button. Nice shove there with the 10-8 offsuit. I don't really like this player's limp call with deuces. I mean, once he limps, he's correct to call it off. But here he should just open shove the deuces. Good shove, king 3 offsuit. And 9-8 off. Deuces, we should definitely shove there in the big blind for 6.5 blinds. Ten 9 off, I would shove there for 7 blinds. Probably hero checks because he feels he's been shoving too much. And now we can go ahead and bet. Now, one of the key parts of the strategy is that if our opponent doesn't c-bet, then we should go ahead and always bet the turn. And here, this wouldn't be a c-bet that the button made because of the fact they didn't raise pre-flop, so nobody has the betting lead. But it's basically the same concept. He's the one who was shown, that's voluntarily put chips in the pot here. So once he's checked back, we should bet the turn very wide. Certainly once we pair, even though it's kind of a scary board. Isn't it better to open shove if opponents are loose and call a lot? With some hands, for example, if we have pocket deuces, that would be fine. But if we have a hand that plays well post, then we're happy for them to call and play post against us if they're out of position. With ace 10, no, we're happy for them to stick around with dominated hands and hopefully play poorly post flop. Call with queen deuce off. I'm not sure I understand the question, Somni. On what spot are we potentially calling with the queen deuce? So here bets right out with bottom pair, and heads up, a hand like bottom pair goes up a lot in value. So with the pocket aces, I would either limp or min raise and hope that he sticks around. And with the pocket sixes, he limps. This is a clear shove. And notice that here is pretty much following our strategy and just slowly chipping away against this player. He bet when he was good there. Queen 8 will be an open shove for 7 or 8 blinds. We bank the nuts on the turn and win it with the bet. And get there. Insomnia rates, he min raise and we call with queen deuce off. I don't remember that hand. If here it did do that, I think it's incorrect. I would pretty much never call a raise with queen deuce off. The only time, okay, the time I might call a range with queen deuce off is I'm in the big blind. This is not from a spin, okay? But let's say I'm in the big blind, or even, okay, it could be from a spin. I'm in the big blind, and the small blind min raises, I might call queen deuce off. But other than that, including two-player heads up, it would be very rare that I would call any kind of raise with queen deuce off. Let's go ahead and start another game. See if we have time for that. And think about any questions you guys might have, because we'll save time to answer any questions at the end. Okay. So queen 9, good open pre-flop, and I would c-bet here. Here it does c-bet and takes it down. That's the power of the c-bet, and when he bets under half pot, if his opponent folds even a third of the time, then we are going to show a profit as per the week we did last week with immediate profit. Notice also that here is raising a little more from the small blind than he is from the button because he's out of position and wants to end in more pre-flop. King 6 offsuit I would normally raise from the small blind, blind on blind. Let's see how this player busts. And second pair to top pair. So an incorrect play with the King 5 offsuit. So now the stack, the effective stack is 30 blinds. We'll see how here handles this. I would just fold here with an underpair in the pocket deuces. So 5-3 offsuit, we should normally fold on the button. This is too loose of an open and not part of our strategy. Once we do open it, however, this call is correct, getting 5-1. Look at this. You open 5-3 off, flop a straight. Does life get any better? And what does this bet mean when he bets 118 to 120? It means that he's strong. This usually, I mean, now that I'm saying this, you'll probably have like 10 deuce off. But normally here, this means that he's strong, but he's worried about the flop. So this might mean an overpair or a hand like ace 7 that basically says you're not going to draw out on me for free. And as a result of that, I would just shove, because usually if he bets that much, he wants to get it in. And so kind of right. He probably didn't want to see a lot of turn cards with the pocket fives and would have stacked off if we had shoved the flop. So now right about 10 blinds, factor stack 11 blinds, I would tend to min raise call the ace 10. And this is the kind of insane spewy call that makes spins very profitable against big players. him calling off 10 blinds there with 5-4 offsuit. Got to admire that gamble. I'm obviously not encouraging you guys to make that call. I'm just making a lighthearted comment that it's funny to see that kind of gamble on a player. If I had 3 off, I would bet the flop. We do have an open in a straight draw, so I would bet 40. As played, I would bet turn, and as played, I would bet the river. We have no showdown value with 5 high. We talked about in small pots, we can often get a very good risk-reward ratio on our bluffs, so I would bet 40 as well at the river. Okay. Queen 8. So this guy's shoved the last 2 hands, and what that should make us do as an adjustment, we'll talk more about adjustments next week, but just as a preview, is to play tighter in terms of hands that, like we raised in the button, and wider in terms of stacking off against him, because he's likely to be in a wider range himself. And even though this guy is likely playing too loose and doing some crazy things, like this open with 5-3 off is really bad. Okay, first of all, as a default, we should fold it, but he's been shoving a lot, 3-betting a lot. We're pretty much just throwing away chips in terms of min-raising this hand. And then as played, we have to call, getting 5-1. This hand with ace-6 off, raise call, yeah, we could just shove the ace-6 offsuit once we raise and he 3-bets small, absolutely. Queen 4 will check. And I will go ahead and bet it now. We could go ahead and bet the turn for value. And here we'll bink the double up there. And get it all in here and get coolered. And go out. So that is that game. Sickwood has a question, and Adruno giving him the link, and that's probably going to be better since we don't have too much time at the end here. Thank you, Adruno, for providing that link. And any other questions about what we covered today, anything about spins, or anything at all, go ahead and let me know, and I will answer those. So, who has a question? Ask me anything. AMA. Ask the Mosh. ATM. When are we going to go into heads-up play in detail in spins? I do not believe that we have a separate section devoted specifically to heads-up, but as we saw today, there are plenty of heads-up hands we looked at, and we'll continue to look at for the rest of this course. So, anything else? Things here are good. Rained a little bit today. Trying to drink more water. I would love to know if you know about some rag that play around 5,000 to 6,000 games per month and have at least 37% ITM. My love, the problem is that SharkScope, to my knowledge, does not track spins accurately. So you would need to find someone who had that graph. You can check out, there's a guy, Big Hustler, who has a famous thread on 2+2, and I think he posts his graph and ITM percent for a decent number of spins. So probably looking for threads is your best bet since you won't find it on SharkScope. Adruno, in general on the big blind, when the button min raises and the small blind calls, can I call with any 2 cards for all stack sizes? Good question. The answer is no. And the reason why you can't is because, remember, And you're against two other players. The average player has 33% equity. So you're getting 5 to 1, but it doesn't mean quite as much as getting 5 to 1 heads up. So I would definitely call and 3-bet, obviously with strong hands. I would definitely call wide, but with a junk hand that doesn't have decent high card value or playability, so for example a hand like 7 deuce off, I would certainly fold. Z's out, you're very welcome. Insomnia disagreeing with me as I type it in, saying, yeah, you can call with 7 deuce off. Insomnia, I would respectfully disagree. I do not think that would be a profitable call. IMO. Nico KW is up 1,500 in 9 weeks of $5 and $7 spins. They are very profitable. Well done, Nico KW. That's awesome. I have a feeling Insomnia was trolling me with his with his comment. Were you trolling me, Insomnia? But that's great, Nico. That's really a nice profit playing them, and great to hear that you're doing well in them. So if no other questions, I'm going to end it here. And next week, we are going to look at adjustments based on player type, how to play against maniacs, loose passive players, anything like that. And so stay tuned for that. And hope all of you guys have great weeks at and away from the tables. Kiko cannot, thank you very much. Glad to see you on here. Nico KW, well done with your results, and you are very welcome. Aid Runo, thank you for coming on. Great to see you in the thread, in the coaching, providing helpful links. Very much appreciate that. Shakovic, you are very welcome. It was great to see you on here. Insomnia, my favorite troll. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. Marmax29, you are very welcome. Good luck at the tables this week. Demon29RU, you are very welcome. I speak for everyone when I say that. 99 Problems. I didn't even know you were on here today. Great to see you, man. MyLove109207, you are very welcome. Tachan Eridu, thank you. Tachan Eridu, you should come on one of these with me. You were the one who wanted spins. What do you say? You want to do one of these live together? Arthur8902, you're very welcome. Have a good night. Executor X, always thinking about balanced ranges, unexploitability. Very nice comment question earlier. And hope you have a great night. Freedom 2017, you are very welcome, sir. And Tachan Eridu, great. Message me on Poker Strategy or find me on Skype if you don't mind, and we will figure out the details. That'll be awesome. So thanks, everyone. Have a great week, and I will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.